Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make these puff stitch beanies with an attached faux fur pom-pom. Part of my nails in this video, it's just how I like it. So today the yarn that I am using is a Red Heart Soft. This is the color Heather, or light gray heather. It is a 4 medium yarn. That would be this color right here. The secondary color that I'm going to be doing for this tutorial is also Red Heart Soft in the color Jewel Tone. This is also a 4 weight medium yarn. You will also need a stitch marker. I used a 5mm H hook. You will also need 1 stitch marker, a pair of scissors, and a tape measure. Okay, now that you have your materials, let's go ahead and get started. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel so you can be alerted of when I post new tutorials and yarn giveaways. So for this tutorial, I will be doing these colors. This size is for a toddler / child size. It fits my daughter's head, who is 4. And so hers was a total of 16 inches around, 8 inches on each side. We are going to be making the smaller one today. This one's going to be a little bit bigger because it's a chunkier yarn. So we're going to go ahead and work a newborn, a 0 to 3 month beanie with this colorway. So let's go ahead and get started. So to begin, we are going to start with a slip knot. We are going to chain up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to skip this first stitch and single crochet into the second stitch from the hook. We are going to continue to do this all the way across the row. We will have a total of 7 single crochets at the end of this row. Okay, so getting to the last stitch. So we are working the brim, so we're going to be working back and forth rows. So I'm going to chain up 1 and turn my work. So now we're going to be working into the back loop only. So here's our first stitch next to the hook. We're going to skip that. We're going to go into the second loop here. So instead of going through both of those stitches, both of those loops, we're going to go through the back loop. Okay, so we're going to do that all the way across the row. So working in the back loop only, single crochet into the back loop. We're going to continue to do that across the back loops. Until we get to the end of the row. Okay, there's the last stitch right here. Okay, chain up 1 and turn your work. So the same thing, we're going to single crochet into the back loop of every stitch. So we are going to do that for 7 stitches all the way across. So we're just going to continue to work this pattern, the back and forth rows in the back loop only. So we are going to work this for a total of 36 rows. So continue to do that. Make sure to keep track of your rows. This should be about 10.5 inches total. Okay, so when we are done, the whole brim will equal 10.5 inches. Okay, so we're gonna have roughly, you know, about 5 inches on the front, 5 inches on the back. So go ahead and continue to work your 36 rows, and then we'll meet you back here. Okay, so I have finished my 36 rows. I believe I actually did 37. You want this to total 10.5 inches. This is going to be the brim. So now what we want to do is fold the brim in half, just like that. Now we're going to work these stitches together, just slip stitching along the top. So I'm going to stick my hook in through that first loop, and I'm going to find the first one on the opposite side. Just going to be right there. So we're going to slip stitch 7 stitches across, so just pull it through that loop again. We're going to continue to do this all the way across the brim, just going in through those stitches and slip stitching all the way across. Go ahead and do that. I will meet you back at the other end. Okay, so I have slip stitched across there, so now we have our band. What we're going to do next is we are going to work a total of 42 stitches along the top. So just go ahead and find a space in there. Go ahead and pull that tight here. So I'm going to chain up 1 after we did all those slip stitches. I'm going to work 1 stitch right here. So there's 1 single crochet, here's 2. You may need to increase in a couple stitches, so you want to have a total of 42 all the way across the band. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go ahead and work your 42 stitches, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Okay, so I'm coming up on my 42nd stitch. So before you finish off, we are going to want to change our color. So to do this, you grab up your new color, make a little bit of a loop here, and just finish that stitch off with your new color. At this point, you can go ahead and cut your gray yarn and pull that aside. At this point, I just kind of like to tie my 2 colors together just to make sure they don't come apart like that. Okay. So now we're going to start our puff stitch rounds. Okay, so for this row, you see this is our slip stitch. This is our first stitch. We will want to slip stitch into the first stitch and chain up 1. We are then going to work a puff stitch in that first stitch. So to work a puff stitch, we are going to do this for a total of 4. So we want to have 9 loops on our hook. So here's 1, yarn over, go into that loop. Now you have 3, yarn over, go back into that loop, pull up another hook, another loop. That should be 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarn over, go through there again. There's 7, yarn over, and go through there again. So you should have a total of 9 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 9 loops. And then you want to chain up 1 to lock that in. So now we are going to skip the next stitch and do another puff stitch into the next. So yarn over, skip this first stitch, go in here, pull up a loop, 3, there's 4 loops, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now we're going to pull through all 9 of those loops. Chain up 1, oops, chain up 1. Okay, so that's how that's going to look. So we are going to skip the next stitch, go into the following stitch, and do another puff stitch. So there's 3. Okay, so now I have a total of 9 on my loop. I'm going to go ahead, pull through all of those, and chain up 1 to lock it in. Skip the next stitch, work a puff stitch in this one. So you're going to continue to do this all the way around the brim until we have a total of 41 puff stitches. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back at the end of this row. So for this next row, once you have completed your 21 puff stitches, we are just going to be doing regular, no decrease at all. We are just going to work 1 puff stitch in every one around for a total of 21. So to begin, we are going to find this first stitch right here. So here's our slip stitch. Here's our first stitch. We're going to go ahead, go in there and slip stitch. So we're always going to have this slip stitch. If you would like to mark that or your chain up 1, you can. I'm going to go ahead and, I can't find my stitch markers, so I'm going to go ahead and just use this bobby pin. Okay, so once you chain up 1, we are going to work a puff stitch into that same spot where we slip stitch and chain up 1. So we're going to go ahead, work in that space. We're going to do, let's see here, caught an extra loop there. Let's start over. Okay, so in that same spot, we are going to do 1. So we have 3 loops, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, yarn over, pull through all 9 loops, chain up 1 to lock it in. So where we are going to be placing our next stitch, you see here, this is the chain up 1 from our previous row. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to work right in there. So we don't need to slip stitch. We can just go ahead, yarn over, go into this stitch right here, and do another puff stitch. So there's 3 loops, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Go ahead and pull through those loops, chain up 1. We're going to move on to our next puff stitch. You see the space right here. So we don't want to be working into this space. We want to actually be working into the stitch. So go ahead, there's 3 loops. Here's 4, 5 loops, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Yarn over, pull through all 9 loops, and chain up 1. Okay, so you're just going to continue to work this pattern of a puff stitch in each of the previous puff stitches for a total of 21 for this row. So let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And pull through, chain up 1. So continue to do that all the way around for row 2 of the puff stitches, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Okay, so I've done our 21 puff stitches. So for rows 3 and 4 of the puff stitch row, so the next 2 rows, we are going to do 1 puff stitch in each for a total of 21 all the way around. So we will have 4 rows total of puff stitches with 21 puff stitches in each row. So go ahead, do that. Meet me back here for row 5, and we will start on the decrease row. Okay, so here we go. We've done 4 rows of the puff stitch. So what we're going to do now is we are going to decrease. So we are going to work 3 puff stitches, and then we are going to decrease. So let's go ahead and start with that. So here's our first stitch. We are going to slip stitch into that first one just like we've been doing. Chain up one, we are going to work our first puff stitch here. So we're going to do, there's 3 loops. Oops. 3 loops, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And pull through, chain up one, go into the next puff stitch, 1, 2, let's see here, 3 loops, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 loops on our hook. Go ahead and pull through, chain up one. Here is our last puff stitch before we decrease. 3, okay. So now we are going to decrease over the next 2 puff stitches. So the way that I decrease puff stitches is we're going to go into this loop twice, we're going to go into the next space twice, and then we will pull through all the loops. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have 2 loops. We have 3 loops on our hook, 4, 5, okay, 6. Now we're going into the next loop, once, twice. Okay, so you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 stitches between these 2 puff stitches. So now we're going to yarn over. We're going to pull through all of those loops and chain up one. So that was our puff stitch decrease. So we did 1, 2, 3 full puffs, and then we decreased over the next 2 puff stitches. So let's go ahead and work that one more time. We are going to work 3 puff stitches and then decrease. So let's go ahead and do that really fast. So there's 1 normal puff stitch. There's our second normal puff stitch. Okay, then we're going to go into the third one. Okay, so I've done 3 puff stitches. Now we are going to decrease over the 4th one. So over these next 2 stitches is where we're going to be decreasing. So I'm going to go into this stitch twice and this stitch twice. You'll have a total of 9 loops on your hook. So 1, 2, so you're 1, 2. Okay, now we're going to switch over to this one, yarn over, 1 and 2, yarn over, and pull through all 9 loops on your hook, chain up 1. You're going to work another 3 puff stitches, decrease, continue that until you get to the end of row 5, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Okay, so I've worked my decreases around. So far I have 16 stitches. We have 1 more to work right here. It's not going to be a decrease, it's just going to be a regular stitch. So we will have a total of 17 puff stitches at the end of row 5. So for row 6, we are going to do the same thing, but we are going to work in the next 2 spaces instead of 3, and then we will decrease. So here's our first stitch. We will slip stitch just like always. Make sure that's kind of tight because we don't want a big old space right here. So go ahead and make sure that's tight. Chain up 1. Start your first puff stitch in that first stitch. Okay, so here's our first puff stitch. Chain up 1. We're going to go into the next, work a regular puff stitch. Now we're going to decrease over these next 2 stitches. Let's go ahead and go into each of these twice. So there's 1, 2, make sure you're going into the stitch. 3 and 4. Okay, so now we have a total of 9 loops, so we're going to go ahead and decrease, chain up 1, work 2 more regular puff stitches into the next 2 stitches, chain up 1, and then we will decrease after we do 2 normal puff stitches. Sorry, I keep saying puff stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to decrease over these next 2. Okay, so continue to do that until you get to the end. At the end of row 6, you should have a total of 13 puff stitches. Okay, so I just finished working row 6. So as you'll notice, you will do a decrease and then you'll have 3 stitches left. So go ahead and just work in those 3. So go ahead, count back your stitches, make sure that you have 13. This next row for row 7 is also going to be a decrease row. So just kind of following, you know, like we've been doing before, we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into the first stitch there. Make sure we pull that nice and tight. Chain up 1, puff stitch. Okay, so make sure you have 9 loops on the hook. Go ahead, pull through those. So now we're going to do 1 stitch and decrease, 1 stitch and a decrease. So there's 1 puff stitch. We're going to decrease over the next 2 puff stitches. Oops, make sure you're going into the chain space. Okay, you have 9 loops. Go ahead, pull it through just like we've been doing. So at the end of this row, you will have a total of 9 stitches. So go ahead and do that. I'll meet you back for row 8. Okay, so this next round is going to be our last round of decreases. We are going to decrease over each stitch, so we will have a total of 5. So as you see, we are kind of closing it up right here at the top. So like before, we are going to slip stitch into that first stitch. Make sure this is really tight, or else you will have holes going up. Chain up 1, and we are going to go into this first stitch twice. And then we're going into the second stitch twice, because remember, we are decreasing. Pull through all 9 stitches, chain up 1. Yarn over, go into the next stitch twice, like that. Go into the following stitch twice, and pull through all 9 loops. So it is going to get a little tight here as we get down to these last 5 stitches. Okay, coming into our next stitch, we are going to do that twice. Yarn over, go into the next stitch twice, and pull that tight. Chain up 1. Okay. So let's see, we have a total of 1, 2, 3 stitches, so we have 2 more decreases to do. Yarn over. Go ahead and do this until you have a total of 5 puff stitches, and I will meet you at the beginning. Okay, so our last row before we cut off, we are going to single crochet into each of the stitches. So we're going to have a total of 10 stitches. So I'm going to do my first stitch right here. Go ahead and put my marker there. So we're going to work 10 single crochets around the top. So we have 1, 2, just wherever you can find a spot, 3, 4. We're just working in the top here. Let's see here, 5. 6, 7. I guess I'm going to end up with maybe 8. Let's see here. 7, 8. Yep, I'm going to end up with 8 stitches. So whatever works for your top. I'm going to slip stitch into the last stitch there, draw up a loop, and I'm going to cut this yarn. Make sure to leave a long tail because we will be using this to sew in our pom-pom. Okay, go ahead and pull that loop tight. Take your stitch marker out. Now what I like to do to close off, because you'll see we still have a little bit of a hole right here. So I just like to take my hook and just kind of go in and out, weaving the yarn, and then I will pull it tight to kind of make it like a drawstring. So just continue to do that back and forth. Okay, there you go, just kind of pull that tight. So there you guys have it. This is the baby version of the larger hat that I made. Let me go ahead and grab that. Okay, so my daughter did something with the larger size, but if you have a faux fur pom-pom like this one, I have like a little loop right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use this to thread that onto the beanie. Okay, there you go. Pom-pom is attached. Super adorable baby beanie. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like this video, subscribe, and leave me a comment if you have any suggestions or tutorials that you would like to see. Thank you everybody for joining, and have a great day.